Hey there, everyone. This is Samuel Johnson.
And I'm Haley Dudley.
And welcome back to the Steven Universe Retrospectives. And today we're going to be discussing episodes 61 and 62 of Steven Universe. We Need to Talk and Chille. Now, We Need to Talk is another flashback episode. In this case, the framing device for this one is that Steven and Connie are helping Greg move some of his old albums, and while they're looking through the albums, they decide to play one, and so everyone's dancing, everything's having a good time. Steven and Connie are dancing, and of course, and like the last time they danced together, they end up fusing into Stevani right in front of Greg, and pretty much it's like Stevani is a deer in the headlights as Greg looks shocked, they look shocked, and pretty much just out of embarrassment, Stevani unfuses back into Steven and Connie. As such, Steven and Connie are like rushing to try and give an explanation, but Greg is actually more amazed than anything. And as they start asking questions, they start asking, they say, don't tell Connie's parents. She will. They don't know that she does magic stuff. And say, hey, it's okay. I'm probably one of the few humans on Earth that actually knows what you're dealing with. And Steven's like, wait, what? And then Connie's like, well, can you explain? It's like, yeah, Dad, explain. And so Greg tells him the story. And in this case, what's going on in the story is we see Salty Pearl. What's going on is that Greg has talked Rose, Garnet, and Amethyst into helping him do a music video, and it's like a low song called "What Can I Do for You?" I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
Pretty much, it's just basically about Rose and Greg's relationship. But halfway through the song, Pearl decides to intervene and talks Rose into fusing, which also leads to a new fusion. Her name is Rainbow Quartz. We don't see any much of her beyond this episode, and even then her appearance is short. But I kind of like Rainbow Quartz's design-wise. I do like how she does have the same slender kind of athletic build that you see from Pearl, and her outfit definitely looks like a gymnast outfit.
Mm-hmm.
But it also kind of has some of the bigger aspects of Rose. Like her hair is a lot more poofier. She definitely looks like she's larger, and I do like how alluring she tries to make herself look for Greg. But
I appreciate how one set of eyes is like bedroom eyes, the other set of eyes is like ha ha.
Yes, pretty much. But pretty much they pretty much fuse in the middle of the music video, and when they unfuse, Greg is just like in awe of this. He's like, "Oh my god, I can't believe I got that on video!" And Rose tells him what it was. That's Rainbow Quartz. But so once the video's done, Rose excuses herself, though she and Greg promise to meet each other later. But as Greg is cleaning everything up, Pearl decides to be a dick, as she says, "You know, you're just a phase, right?" At which she says that while Rose may be into Greg, well, she's never
a novelty.
Yeah, because she's only interested in him because he's human, and that eventually she'll grow out of him, then she won't care anymore. Which is especially helped by the fact that he can't fuse with her. After all, he's human. Rose is a gem. Rose can fuse with Pearl, but she can't fuse with Greg. So they're never. So it's really nothing's really. They're never going to be as close as Greg thinks they are. As such, Greg says, "Okay, then. Well, then I will fuse. Has anyone ever tried it before?" Pearl says no, and he decides he's going to go forth and do it. But he's clearly having problems as he keeps refusing the music, as he keeps looking back on the music video, but can't seem to get the movements right. And when Amethyst and Garnet go to see what he's doing, and he asks for help, they pretty much make it clear that he has no chance in hell of ever fusing with Rose because, sadly,
you need a gem at the core of your being and a body of light that you can give to a person that you trust completely with that light.
Yeah, and
not metaphorically.
Yeah, no, very much literally. So Greg cannot do it. He cannot fuse with Pearl. He cannot fuse with Rose. So he thinks he's kind of screwed. However, Garnet actually gives him some advice. He said, "What was the advice again?"
You need to figure out your own way to fuse. You can't copy another person's fusion. You have to do it your own. Which
I do like. And as such, Greg decides to do just that, as when he and Rose are going to meet up later, he set up this little impromptu dance floor that made from the lights that he used in the music video. He has some soft music playing, and he and Rose do share like a genuinely nice dance. It's a slow one. They act, move, and sing. It's all nice. And what I love is by the end of it, Rose is just like starstruck by it. But then when Greg realizes they haven't fused, Rose just starts laughing at him because, well,
of course you can't fuse.
You're human. As such, Greg thinks this again a problem, but she says, "No, it's not a problem. I love humans. You're all so funny." And that causes Greg to snap. And so while he does talk about, like, yeah, the last few months have been fun, which I'll talk about later, the last few months have been fun, he just wants to know if there's any future with them. Are they
Do you respect me?
Which just prompts her to laugh even harder, and Greg to finally snap at her, saying, can you just talk to me like a real person? And this causes Rose to freeze, as her only response to that is, I'm not a real person. Is this not how it works? I thought we were having fun. At which point, Greg kind of has a mini breakdown as he starts crying, and he realizes Rose really is really an alien, and she really does not understand how things work. And what I love throughout the whole thing is as he's freaking out, as he's crying, Rose is just watching him, looking genuinely confused as she's trying to figure out what's going on. Like, as she sees him crying, he's like, are you sad? Did I do something wrong? It looks like a child who's just been yelled at because they touched something they weren't supposed to, but they didn't know that they weren't supposed to touch it. I do love that, but as a result, Greg just says, maybe we should just talk. And so they actually do start talking. It's quiet. They actually share details with one another, but both pretty much come to the same conclusion. We don't know what we're doing here.
We're both very confused,
and we don't know where to go. And as a result, and even by the end, when Greg asks, "Have you ever been in love with a human?" She's like, "How do you know?" It's like, it's torture. And Rose says, "Is this torture for you?" And he says the words like, "Oh, I'm sorry." It's like, "No, don't be." And it just, what I love is that they both start freaking out here, and Rose says, "This is good. We actually have something in common here." And they just start dancing again as they both cry laughing.
And then Garnet and Amethyst and Pearl are watching in the background and all that, and Garnet goes, I think this one's her favorite.
No, that was Amethyst.
Amethyst goes, I think this one is her favorite. And
no. Amethyst says, I think this one's my favorite. Then Pearl says, I think he's her favorite too.
Yeah.
And by the end, it cuts back to the present day with Greg pretty much saying, look, humans and gems, it's new territory, but you guys are going to have to figure it out together. And Connie, if you ever need another human to talk to, I'm right here. And so they just say, human beings?
Human beings? Human beings.
And the episode ends with Steven just whispering human
beings
and clutching his gem. So, that's another thing we can unpack later.
Drama.
But that also leads us into Chille, as in this episode, Steven and the gems are looking for malachite. As, well, there's still a timer. They're still trying, like I said, they're looking for her. She's somewhere beneath the ocean, and in this episode, they kind of emphasize why they're putting such emphasis on looking for her, because, well, while a normal fusion is built on trust and camaraderie between gems and, just general equilibrium, malachite is a fusion built on distrust and anger. And while Lapis may be doing everything in her power to keep the fusion under control, eventually that control could break, and again, considering the emotions that make malachite whole, it could very much lead to destruction if she was ever unleashed. So it kind of puts emphasis on finding her more than just saving Lapis. Mm-hmm. It also means stopping this thing. However, Garnet thinks that Steven needs to give up the search because, well, it's late and he needs sleep. As such, they return Steven home, but Steven remarks that maybe the gems should get rest too, because he thinks they look exhausted, and Garnet says, you know what, I agree, and so she ends up pretty much forcing Pearl and Amethyst into staying behind and watching Steven, and so Steven makes it a little slumber party, while Garnet goes off to continue searching for malachite. However, as the slumber party goes on, Steven is trying to explain to Pearl what sleep is, because she's never actually slept before, and as he's doing it, he falls asleep, and we get to the actual part of the episode that leads to the episode being called Chille, as Steven dreams about having a sitcom where the gems are the supporting characters, and Garnet's catchphrase is Chille. Mm-hmm. But the premise for the dream episode is that Steven is going to his first school dance with Connie, but when he goes to answer the door, first it's Garnet, and then when he goes to answer it again thinking it's Connie, it's instead Lapis. And the thing is, the whole dream is in black and white, like an old sitcom. Lapis is in full color, and she's crying and drooling just bucket loads of water, which suddenly flood the area, swallow Steven before he wakes up. when he tries it as such, when he wakes up and just freaking out, Pearl asks what the heck happened, and he tries telling her about Lapis, and Pearl's like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. Lapis at the bottom of the ocean. But again, Steven says no. It tries explaining how dreams work, that they don't always make sense. And when he tries explaining how a dream operates and how he had this last dream he had, it ends up boring himself and Pearl so much that they both end up falling asleep. And Steven has another dream where he's flying in the sky with Dogcopter, and then Pearl is a giant head and Amethyst is riding a whale. However, as he's flying along, the weird doesn't make sense part of the dream seems to end as Steven flies into a black void. And he comments this feels weird, and then he hears another voice say, yeah, this is weird. And when he looks around, he sees Lapis again. At first he chalks this up to, oh, it's just a dream, this doesn't make sense, but she says, no, what are you doing here? It doesn't make any sense.
I need to focus.
But that gets once again interrupted when Steven gets woken up again, except this time it's by Amethyst's laughter, because as Pearl is sleeping, her Pearl is projecting her dream. And it's her it's
her on a surfboard of pizza holding Rose, saying, oh my goodness, let's run away together, until Rose turns around and it's Greg's face saying,
Pearl, I just wanted to say thank you for fixing my van!
And then a pizza slice just comes out his mouth.
That's great. And just like Pearl looks so horrified when she wakes up. She's in a cold sweat.
What did my brain create?
And then when Steven tries questioning her, but Steven ends up bringing up his dream again, and while Pearl tries writing it off because, oh, it's just a dream. Dreams don't make sense. Steven actually does clarify he doesn't think this was a dream. At which point Pearl starts taking it more seriously, and they start to realize something. Steven is somehow connecting with Lapis through his dreams. And as such, they think if he can go back to sleep again, maybe he can actually contact her so that she can tell them where Malachite is. As such, Steven is able to fall asleep again rather quickly, and since he knows what he's looking for, he's able to essentially laser focus on that, and he does manage to connect to Lapis, though how he does it is clearly strange, as he flies through remnants of the other dreams before landing on this big, poofy, what looks like a mane, so to speak. But he gets absorbed into it, and he ends up on this big, giant, watery, I want to say plane?
Yeah, I mean, it was just kind of like a flat, level surface extending of water.
And in there, he sees Lapis chained to the ground. And as he's talking to her, she says, no, you gotta get out of here. I gotta stay focused. If I stop staying focused, I'll lose control. And Steven says, look, come on, just tell us where you are. We can help you. And this manages to distract Lapis enough that the chains end up pulling her beneath the surface. And what rises out from it instead is Jasper in her own set of chains. And the instant she sees Steven, she just starts crawling towards him, clearly with intent to do physical harm unto him, until the chains end up pulling her back under the water and Lapis rises out. Though now she's got scuff marks on her, clearly showing that just doing that took a lot out of her to do. As such, she pretty much tells Steven to knock it the hell off, don't look for her, she doesn't want to be found. And when Steven keeps pleading with her, she says, no, we're Malachite now. Before she goes back under the surface, and what emerges is not Lapis or Jasper, but Malachite, who then floods the whole area, looks to Steven, and yells at him to go, resulting in Steven waking up, freaking out, and that's when Garnet comes in, wants to know why they're still awake. Steven tries talking with her, but Garnet pretty much just shushes him, telling him it's okay, it's all right. Look, let's just get you back to sleep. It's clear you guys are having problems going back to sleep. Let me show you how it's done. Yeah. It plops down, falls asleep, and that's where the episode ends. So.
Mm-hmm.
So, what were your thoughts on We Need to Talk?
I mean, first off, it kills me the end of that episode with the whole, human beings.
Yeah.
Poor Steven, like.
Yes.
The gems talk about him like he's a human all the time, and then his father and best friend just disqualified him from being a human being.
Yeah, that's before we get to the actual episode, let's talk about that. I was going to save it for the end, but if you're going to bring it up now.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's totally fine. But what I kind of like about that is that that's another hint of something darker going on beneath the surface with Steven. Like, we've seen how things seem to have an effect on Steven and how they seem to be kind of making him realize the gravity of his situation. Like, throughout most of season 1, he just saw the gems as good guys versus bad guys, but then that's when he first met Lapis, and he got a sense that there was something bigger going on, when Lapis was actually a gem, and he learned the monsters they've been fighting are actually were actually gems once, before something changed them. But then, sorry, a burp. But then when he actually confronted the homeworld gems, that's when he learned it's not just as simple as good guys versus bad guys. These are refugees of an interstellar war, and these are the only people left of an army. It made him start to realize just how serious things were. And when he actually does try to explain the situation to people, they do realize just how effed up it is. And when he realizes their reactions, he starts realizing just how serious the job really is. But here, this kind of goes in a different direction. Because, like you said, among the gems, Steven is the token human. He's the most normal out of all of them. Yeah, he has gem powers, but he's still not a full gem. He requires stuff. He requires
food, sleep,
sustenance. He still is basically the token human, and he's not as indestructible as your average gem. So even among the gems, he can kind of feel maybe like an outcast. But now imagine when you're among a group of humans, people you're most like. But even among them, you're the strange one. In this case, when Greg talks to Connie and says, if you ever need someone to talk about, I'm here, and they just say human beings and just kind of do a high five, right in front of Steven, just imagine how that would make him feel. Because in that regard, it almost makes it feel like he doesn't belong anywhere.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he does not technically fit into either category, and that is a thing, but like the way that his family and friends put it in front of him, I feel like contributes to him just like him locking away all his problems. Because even in season 2 and 1 and 2, you can see that he doesn't talk to people when he's having a big issue with stuff, because he can solve it on his own. Even when it's like small things, he's the one who can deal with the problem.
Oh, that actually makes a lot of sense. I never kind of considered that. That actually could explain why he most likely internalizes a lot of what he deals with. Like, he did. Oh! Going back to the end of season 1. In the end of season 1, he did not want to share what happened on the ship with Connie because he thought it would scar her. But by the end, he did open up to her because he felt that he could actually trust her. And he genuinely still wanted her to be in his life. But again, going back to what you said, when these two people that are most important in your life kind of exclude you in this way, they're not trying to hurt him, but the way they go about it does help emphasize to Steven that he really does not belong in that world more than as much as he thinks he does, because he really does. Because he's not human. He looks human. He has human qualities. He still requires all the human sustenance, but he's also a gem. But then even among gems, he's the weirdo. Because he is not like gems. He has a fleshy exterior. His body is not made of light. It's gooey, pink, whatever.
It's fleshy bits.
Yeah, fleshy bits like that. And so he's an outcast. So he doesn't fit in it there either. He doesn't quite fit in other worlds. And while Steven can mostly deal with that, imagine having these two people that you trust kind of exclude you in that regard.
Right.
It can leave you with some issues, and it would kind of explain why he probably wouldn't want to talk with them very much, because in his own regard, he feels like he's on his own.
Right. And like that, plus the fact that like when he does talk to his dad or Connie or stuff like that, he is the strongest human. He is the warrior human, basically. But when he talks to Pearl and Garden and that, he is the empathetic therapist gem, almost. Like, it is his job for the humans to protect them, while it is his job for the gems to help them understand. And so because he has a designated job, at least the way he feels, and there is no, we're here for you too in that regard, he just keeps doing his roles and no one picks up for him.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to get into that later when I get to talking about Steven Universe future, just Steven Universe future. But needless to say, I think that's an early sign of Steven developing a coping mechanism for his thing. Again, I'll talk about that when I get to Steven Universe future, but needless to say, that would explain why he kind of slips more into those roles. But aside from that bit of character stuff that can be built on later, the rest of the episode,
it really highlights for me how much I don't particularly like. I understand and appreciate Rose Quartz. I also feel like she's one of those characters that the character herself does not have any interest in growing any more than necessary, and I feel like this episode really highlights just how much of a persona Rose Quartz is, and not like a new person, because she literally is playing. Like, she describes, you had mentioned it as we were watching it, she describes everything that she does with Greg as playing, and that they are entertaining each other. It's not they're living this experience together. And you even see that when she's like, when Craig finally snaps at her, is like, I just talk to me like I'm a person, and she goes, but I'm not a person. Like, she really doesn't think of herself as being a part of his story. She just thinks of herself as a casual observer of it, which, oof, that poor Greg.
Yeah. Personally, for me, I think what helps me emphasize what I like about the episode is that I think that reaction, that like the blow up at the end, I think is a nice way of showcasing more of how Greg and Rose's relationship continue. Because going back to what I kind of alluded to back in the, what was the episode called? Story for Steven. That was what it was called. Back in the Story for Steven episode, in that one, you saw a hint of how Rose viewed humans. Because when she saw Greg, she's like, look, I think you're cute. And I so want to play with you, but you have your own life to live, and so forth. She called it playing. Her relationship with Greg was just that. A game. While what Pearl said was hurtful, she wasn't wrong.
No.
It really, from the beginning, it really was a game to Pearl. She loved human beings, but she loved them more for the novelty, what they could be. And that's why, and while she did like Greg, she never saw him as anything more than just somebody she could play with. Which, I'm sorry to say this, and my mind likes to go there because it's a dirty mind, but when Greg was having his freak out at Rose, and he said, look, the last few months have been great, she gives him bedroom eyes and says, oh, yes. Like, they have fucked.
Oh, 100%.
Yes, they have fucked at least a few times. You cannot tell me that they didn't. That was a bedroom face. They have had sex.
But then to have that sort of a connotation right before Greg says, don't you respect me? And then she laughs in his face.
Yeah, that's like another bit of up yours right there. Because, again, I think because again, from her perspective, this was just a game. This was just them playing with each other.
This is like kids in school playing house, not people in a relationship.
Exactly. And while Rose liked all the stuff associated with it, like she did like doing this with Greg, she liked spending time with him, she liked his presence, as Pearl said, it's because he was human. And it wasn't because of all the unique stuff he could do, it's just the stuff he could do. She saw the potential and it's like, oh, this human does this, I want to see it. Oh, he wants to share with me, I love to be a part of it. And it's all a game to her.
Honestly, though, I will say that is probably why, like, the fact that Greg is human and he does have this extra novelty factor is probably why Rose, like, did try to understand where he's coming from.
Yes.
Because in her mind, humans are just so fascinating, and it's not like Gems up to this point haven't tried to say, hey, you need to think about relationship, not just the entertainment value sort of thing. That was the first time that someone was like, talk to me, be with me, let me communicate with you in that way. And the fact that it was coming from a silly human was probably the thing that made her go, oh shit, I'm fucking this up.
Exactly. And I think in my opinion, what makes that work is that I think that's the moment when it stopped being a game. Because at that moment, because here's the thing, throughout all this episode and even back in Story for Steven, Rose kept calling Greg Mr. Universe. She never once used his real name. But it wasn't until he had his freak out at her and they just stopped trying to have fun and just talk that they actually that she actually called him Greg. Because at that point he wasn't just another human. This was someone that she was actually having a conversation with, someone that she started confiding in. At that point, it was at that moment that it wasn't a game anymore. It was a genuine relationship, because at that point they started sharing things with each other. They started talking with each other. They started revealing more things to each other, and that's what ultimately made it more than just a distraction for Rose. That's I think when Rose started to realize, I want this, not just for novelty's sake. It's because I want to know this person more. I want to be more than just a game for this person. I want to be a part of their lives, and I want them to be a part of my life. Because at this point, he actually challenged her and made her realize, I'm doing this wrong. Like you said, because when that scene where where Greg freaks out at her, she just stops laughing and freezes up. She just has this
absolutely baffled look, like, just...
Because at that point, she did not know that she was doing anything wrong. She genuinely thought this was how it worked. And odds are that any humans that she has had relationship with before, because even Pearl said that she's been with other humans before, and even Rose admitted that she has loved other humans. With those people, it probably was a similar case. They're from two different worlds, and even the other humans probably couldn't stay long enough to deal with that sort of thing. And odds are, but this human actually challenged her, actually did say, look, we need to talk. We can't just keep doing this, because I don't know if you respect me as an individual. I try to respect you, but you don't respect me. And that's what finally made them that two-way communication is what finally led them to becoming closer, which I think is actually a good lesson for kids, because they need to know they can't, when the key to a relationship isn't just, oh, you make the other feel nice. No, you need to have that communication. You need to be able to talk. It's not just someone that you can goof around with. It's someone that you can trust in.
I also appreciate, though, like, feeding off that, this is a great representation of communication and relationship. I appreciate that it wasn't like they got into a huge fight and then, came together, sort of thing, like what you usually see when you see shows see an episode that is about communication and relationships. It was, they were missing each other when it came to what they wanted, and the big climax, big problem came right next to the resolution. And it wasn't that it was a whole resolution where they're all sitting there, oh wow, we're gonna have a super healthy relationship now. It was, okay, we can talk to each other.
Yeah, by the end,
that was the only revelation there.
Yeah.
Was that, okay, we should and can speak to each other about these issues. And let's do that.
Yeah, what made it better is that confusion is what ultimately brought them together, because they ultimately realized, hey, we don't know what we're doing. That's something we have in common. And again, the fact that they're both laughing and crying about it showcases that they do want to. That's something they want to build on, because it's clear that because even throughout this whole thing, they never stopped holding hands. It's honestly, I think it's sweet. I like it, and I just I do like. And again, like I said, I do like seeing more development on that part, because I do like seeing Rose develop more as a character and seeing where she goes and seeing how her relationship with Greg goes. And I like how it's showcased here, and again with the moral and everything, seeing salty Pearl, seeing Greg interacting with the gems, which I like the relationships that Greg has with the different gems. Like at this point, now that they're friends, they are not treating him as the human that wandered in. They actually talk to him. Like Amethyst, like he has a relationship with Amethyst, and he has to bribe her in order for her to take part in the band. He and Garnet actually do talk, and Garnet actually gives him some helpful advice, and Pearl is a jealous bitch.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, though, I feel like Pearl being jealous has more to do with, she was once in Greg's position where she was the novelty, and...
But she's still here.
So, spoilers, sorry. Understanding pearls are bought, and so she is, now coming into her personhood, and this being a flashback, this is her still establishing herself post-war as a free gem, and still living with Rose, who essentially owned her for her entire existence. And now, like, that's the first person to make her feel like she's her own gem, and that she can do whatever she wants to do, and she doesn't have to respond or listen to any specific person, because she, by virtue of existing, has the right to choose. And now she sees that same energy being shifted from the gems to this dude. And it's not even just the same energy, it's something new and different, because Rose really was intrigued by the idea of humans and being able to change and grow and all that stuff. I would venture to say that Greg was probably the first human that actually asked Rose to grow with him.
Mm-hmm.
And that added another novelty factor to it. Like, not saying that she was just doing it for that, but like the fact that this person also wanted her to come along with the journey with them, that probably intrigued her on a different level, because she had never really had that been asked of her before. And Pearl, watching that connection being formed, feeling herself lose her friend, well, lose because she's not really losing her friend, who she is deeply in love with.
Yeah.
And Rose never really addresses Pearl's
feelings.
No,
I don't think. I think if
she just kind
I
of.
would argue that Rose was blind to them.
Yeah, I mean, she just accepts them as friendly devotion, and that's what, you're supposed to do. And woof.
But yeah, she did. Yeah, that's a whole other thing to unpack there.
Yeah.
But put simply, I also could kind of see it as Pearl projecting as well, especially when she talks about Greg being a novelty, that she'll get tired of her. And I think, again, it's Pearl, once again, being kind of salty because she can at least rest assured in the knowledge that when Greg goes, she'll still be there. But again, by the end, we know how that story ends. So, but
which also, in my opinion, again, spoiler bit, that.
You're just gonna spoil everything rotten, aren't you?
I know. That also explains why she had such a hard time accepting Steven, because Steven was the end of Rose, but like Steven came to be because of Rose's and Greg's relationship. Because of that connection, Rose wanted to create something entirely new with Greg.
Yeah.
Which she could not do with Pearl in any way, which that's their own honestly, that is their own version of fusion. Oh my god.
It kind of is, actually. And especially with Steven having to inherit Rose's gem.
Right.
But in that regard, too, what makes that even more hurtful, I had a point here, let me try and remember it. What makes it more hurtful for Pearl is that even when Steven is gone, she has to hold on to any vestiges that she had, that, oh, she trusted me the most. But by the end, little by little, she starts realizing that she wasn't in as high regard as she thought she was, especially when she learns about Rose keeping secrets, or that or when Steven actually does call her out on certain things. It does make her start realizing, I really wasn't as important as I thought I was, and these things that I'm holding on to are just feelings. They really were just me.
I will also say, though, that this episode for me makes me it makes me really think that, like, with Greg and Rose, they oh crap, I had a point too and it just ran away. They really just seem to have, like, Greg was like the first person, again, I've said this already, but like Greg was like the first person.
I repeat everything on these things.
Greg was the first person to get Rose to grow on her own and grow as a gem in herself, which, yeah, but like I don't remember when it's described, but I know it is said in the show that like Greg was one of the few people that Rose felt like she could be completely free with. And Pearl knows all of the old stuff, knows everything that Rose has been through, has been with her through all of it. And yeah, there is a kind of an appeal to being able to have a completely fresh start. I feel like Rose, that was her main coping mechanism, was whenever she was not, like, whenever there was a huge issue that she did not want to have to deal with, fresh start. Either run away from the problem or completely eliminate it.
I think that would help explain why she probably thought of her flings with humans as just her playing with them. She can have all the fun of being in a relationship, but there's no attachment.
Right, because she was never really attached. She was just trying it out. And when she was done with that, okay, this has kind of gone bad. I don't like these feelings anymore. Wipe that slate clean, fresh start.
Yep, we're done. We're done. I had fun playing with you, but we're done.
Which also would explain why Pearl's so confident that she'll get tired of you eventually, because eventually that's what Rose has done every single time, has just been like,
I just realized something. That was Pearl trying to sabotage them.
How?
That was her trying to say. I think she was trying to intentionally put strife in there to try and put a wedge between them and probably split them up faster.
I don't think so. I can kind of see where you're coming from with that. I would argue that was more just Pearl flexing her superiority muscles, which we know she likes to do. Um, Saying, you can't fuse, you can't have this connection that I have, which then also explains why at the end she is like looks so devastated when she realizes that Rose and Greg have an emotional connection that she doesn't have with Rose.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it goes. I think he's her favorite too, because like
that made her realize at that point that it wasn't a fling.
Yeah, and it she wasn't even in the running. Like,
nope.
Oof.
That's gotta
I
be.
almost feel bad for Pearl, honestly. Cause
I think
like,
I mean, you probably can feel bad for her. I mean, you can still get angry at her for acting the way she did, but at the same time, yeah, she was pining for something that she would never get, or she never even had in the first place. Which, ugh. Which, yeah. Overall, though, I think it is a good episode. Like I said, I liked seeing the relationship build between Rose and Greg. I think the moral, is well done and executed maturely. And overall, I like seeing again the flashbacks. I like seeing more layers to the characters. And again, by the end, when Greg actually does tell Steven and Connie, look, this is a new territory, but you can work it out together. It's nice and it does offer hope. But again, there's that little extra sting with Steven at the end, which does, I think, help lay the groundwork for future character stuff later on. So there's that. But of course, we should also talk about Chille. What'd you think? What'd you think of that episode?
Honestly, I thought it was a great little metaphor for toxic relationships. Being a friend to someone in a toxic relationship and wanting to help them, the person getting lost in it, but you still can try and help them. You can still be there for them, even if they're lost in the anger and the mistrust and all of that stuff.
Yeah, which I admit kind of flew over my head. I kind of looked at the more obvious things, which is why I'm glad that you're here, because even when I watched the episode, I thought to myself, there's an analogy here that I'm missing. I saw, I could kind of sense it, but I didn't get it. So I think you verbalizing it just right there, I think gets it, because I think that's a good way of looking at the episode. It's a nice little window into a toxic relationship, and Garnet described it best. Malachite is not like other fusions. Other fusions in the past have been built on mutual trust, camaraderie, and essentially
love. Basically.
Well, not always love.
But
it really does depend on the situation, because the gems
at least general respect for the other.
Exactly. It has to actually be built on something. When Pearl and Amethyst fuse into Opal, it's because they have common goals and they want to work together to achieve them, because they know they can't do them on their own. When Garnet and Amethyst fused into Sugilite, it's because they needed to smash something. Which, while Sugilite was one of those gems that could go out of control.
Honestly, Sugilite is another show of a toxic relationship, but that's a toxic relationship that you unintentionally lose yourself in and burn yourself out in.
Yeah, because sorry to interrupt you.
I interrupted you, so.
No, it's fine. We interrupt each other. But bottom line, what helps with Sugilite is that Sugilite is like one of those unintentionally toxic relationships that you enjoy being with the person, but you bring out the worst in each other, and that's kind of what brings that. That's what the way it is with Sugilite. Well, Garnet and Amethyst trust each other and do working well with each other. It's just that when they fuse together, they bring out the worst in each other, and Sugilite embodies that, because Sugilite likes to smash things, likes to go nuts, and then when left to her own devices, she'll just keep going until she gets bored and look for something else to smash, regardless of who it is. To the point where she gets so lost in the fusion that they don't ever want it to end, even though it's not healthy. But then, of course, even Stevani though is another example. But even then, that's a more stable fusion than Malachite, because there's still mutual trust between the people involved. Even Stevani is a similar case as we saw in We Need to Talk. It's based on Steven and Connie kind of vibing and being in sync, and based on their mutual affection for one another. Malachite is toxic from the ground up, while Sugilite is toxic based on the implications. Again, it's still built on mutual respect and synchronization between the involved gems. They both want this, they both are in sync with it, and they both trust each other. It's just that they bring out the worst in each other when they do this. Malachite was built on deception. Lapis fused with Jasper under the pretense of trying to get her under control because she was actively threatening Steven and the crystal gems.
Mhm.
So she needed to keep her in line. And while Jasper thought they were on the same page, immediately Lapis turned it on its head and dragged her into the ocean.
Mhm.
So and very much the whole and you see that in this episode when Steven interacts with Lapis through his dreams, you see Lapis struggling and fighting just to keep it in line.
Mhm.
And it's clear that this is a battle that's being hard on both players because
Mhm.
Lapis is struggling so because
they both appear a little more beat up every time.
Yeah, and they're both in chains. They're both literally chained together.
Mhm.
They're both prisoners of this. It's just that Lapis is the one keeping it a prison because she has to hold Jasper back. She has to keep fighting and fighting so hard. But then when she loses concentration, she gets dragged under. And when Jasper comes up, it looks like she's taking a breath because it's like, finally, I can take a break.
Mhm.
It's just that but of course, when she has that moment, all it takes is Lapis fighting back, and she gets dragged under again. But when Lapis comes out, she's beaten, bruised, scarred. It looks like she's been through hell, but she's still keeping going. And when Steven, like you said, tries to help her, she tells him to go the hell away.
Let me do this for you.
Yeah, like this is something that we need to do. And
Which,
the way
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I do feel like that also reflects on like Lapis's low personal self-esteem because like that almost feels like, you know, the best thing she can do, the most that she can do to pay this person back, which Steven freed her from the mirror and healed her gem and all that with no expectation that she would do anything to help him just because in his mind it was the right thing to do. Fair. But because she was given such a big thing, Lapis feels the need to repay him. And this, trapping herself in this...
putting herself through hell.
Yeah, like trapping herself in the bottom of the ocean with a person who only wants to remain fused with her because of the power boost and has no respect for her as an individual gem, literally up to this point had up to them fusing, had called her, you know, all sorts of names, referred to her as useless, worthless, a traitor, all of that stuff, has nothing but hate, and then goes, you have one purpose now, and that's make me strong through fusion.
Yes, and I think that's which we'll get to later because we see here that they're both pretty much guilty of being abusers in their relationship. Jasper only wanting this for power, and Lapis literally pretty much beating her down just to keep her in line, essentially. Because they're both.
Ooh.
That's pretty much because that is what it is. Essentially, because that is what it is. She is literally. She is, well, not literally. She is pretty much beating Jasper down to keep the fusion in line.
Right. But that also goes into because she started to do that because she realized what the homeworld gems and everything were doing, and so she sided with the crystal gems.
Okay, so you know what?
Before she fused, and so that's
but again, that kind of falls into. Well, I might as well give a little minor spoiler. In a later episode, when this is talked about, it is mentioned that Lapis was taking out her frustration on her. It wasn't
that's
just
the abused becoming the abuser in the relationship. Like,
yeah, because she dealt with a lot of shit. And as I mentioned back in the season 1 finale in Jailbreak, when Lapis yelled at Jasper that she was tired of being everyone's prisoner, now you're my prisoner, that was very much her pretty much saying, I am done. Now you get to listen to me whether you like it or not. And that's pretty much just it. It's abuse pretty much both ways. Jasper is in this for the power, and she is willing to knock Lapis down to keep it in line. But Lapis, to keep the fusion from going nuts, has to beat Jasper down. And she's not just doing it because, well, she has to. She's doing it because she has issues, and she needs something to work them out on, and that thing is Jasper.
I mean, I feel like her intentions started out good. Like, when she first dragged Malachite to the bottom of the ocean, she did that with the thought of, I'm going to protect Steven, who is like the only person who has been nice to me, which I can appreciate that. That also being said, it doesn't, like, that also you can shows that doesn't matter how the relationship starts with the intentions or the intentions that it starts with, or if a relationship is toxic, it will continue to be toxic no matter
It'll
why it started the way it did.
And it'll get worse.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much what happens, because the more toxic it gets, the more control is lost.
Right, and then that you even see Lapis getting lost, like completely lost into the fusion, which you can see make us say is, you know, her getting lost in the relationship and just giving up trying to be, you know, the better person and just saying, fuck it, this is who I am now, and I will exist as this because it's what I deserve.
Pretty much. It's very interesting in that regard, but it not only does well in continuing the whole story arc with Malachite,
Mm-hmm.
but again, it does also lead to a nice analogy with fusion and how it's affecting the various parties. Well, in my opinion, also kind of continuing along Lapis's story arc with her and her aggression, because she has a lot of shit. She's been through hell and back. And now you're kind of seeing how it's having an effect on her and how she's interpreting it, which I like. Plus, again, it does hint but plus, again, it does lay down a hint of Malachite still being out there, because while we saw her get dragged into the ocean, we still know she's out there. And as the gems say, she's a ticking time bomb, and all it needs is the right fuse, and she will go nuts. Which I like. I do like that, just kind of building up for that. It's a nice way of still laying down future storylines. While laying down foundation for future storylines, while also using what you have to build and create these analogies and these stories, which I really like, and seeing how that works. And on lighter news in the episode, I think another thing I like is, one, I like the antics with Steven and the gems as they're looking for Malachite, especially as Steven explains what dreaming is to Pearl, because I love that dream moment. It's hilarious. I laughed out loud when I saw it.
I feel like Pearl was trying to comfort herself when she first dreamed. Dreams don't make sense! They're not real!
Especially when she woke up in a cold sweat. And then my favorite part in the episode is when when the gems bring Steven back to his house, and Steven's like, you guys don't look so good. And they just look like hell. They got bags under their eyes, and they're drooling.
We look awesome.
And again, probably another subtle hint about Garnet and her character arc, but also kind of a funny line. When Garnet says, you guys need to relax. What about you? It's like, I don't need to. I'm always relaxed. She says it with gritted teeth. Again, minor hint towards her character arc, but also a funny line, because I just love how that ain't relaxed.
Yeah, you are totally chill.
Yep, the chillest.
I have two things, and then I think I've said everything that I want to say. First one, I do appreciate that in this whole, you know, analogy for toxic relationships, and this whole episode dedicated to that, they, like, yes, Steven, who is the fix-it man of all the fix-it mans, he just wants to help.
So, I'm sorry to interrupt you when you're done talking. There's something I need to talk about, because I almost forgot it once. I'm not forgetting again. Sorry, continue.
Anyway, he just really wants to help, but, like, the gems also reassure, you know, even if this relationship is toxic, even if Lapis loses herself to Malachite, we will do what we can to help her, which I feel like is just really sweet. That and what was the other one? Oh no, come back. Oh yeah. I feel like this episode definitely really, like, helps highlight that fusions are two separate beings cooperating. Not always well or healthily, but they are cooperating together to create a new thing. And, like, you can actually see that with Malachite because of the fighting between Lapis and Jasper. Like, it is so easy to forget that Garnet is a fusion, and
because Ruby and Sapphire are so in sync that they are pretty much lost to the fusion. Garnet is Garnet. She's not Ruby or Sapphire. She is Garnet. But Malachite, it's clearly two people in the driver's seat, and they're both fighting over the wheel.
And so that definitely, I feel like that just helps that little bit of extra layer of development. But yeah.
And speaking of development, this episode further showcased an ability that I kind of glossed over in an earlier episode: Steven's empathic powers. In an earlier episode in the series, the Nightmare House episode, the one where there was a gem stuck in the lighthouse, Steven showcased an ability involving empathy. Because in the episode, part of the reason why the house was reacting was because it was in genuine pain. Because the gem was stuck in a wall, And earlier, and when Lars was a kid, he carved his name into the wall, and
Mm-hmm.
it caused the gem pain. And so, as the house was continuing to feel worse, Steven kind of clutched his chest and said, I can feel the hurt. I can feel the pain." I forgot to mention in the video because it was such a gloss over thing, and my biggest thing was the stuff I didn't like about the episode, which was Arnaldo and Lars being annoying little dipshits. But ultimately, I think what I'd like that it's expanded on here. In this case, it doesn't. In this case, it's Steven actually being able to reach out to Lapis through his dreams. He actually reaches out and what?
I have a question.
Go nuts.
Um, is Steven's empathic power a result of just generally having a gem and gem magic, or is it because he has, spoiler, pink diamond?
Ah!
Sorry,
Should have just said Rose.
but then you can't know, like, because the
per-
diamonds created all the gems, and so they're all like, they call them my diamond.
Plug your ears here, people.
I'm sorry. And so, is he connected with only specific gems? Because it's not like he had this connection with the crystal gems.
I think it's a general sense. And I think it is because of his gem that he has these powers. Rose had her own version of empathic powers. She could when people were hurt, she felt it. She genuinely felt sorry for them and she cried tears when they were in pain. Hence why and that power passed along to Steven in the form of his saliva, which he can use to give healing kisses.
Right, but that is healing power. That is not empathy to psychic dreaming.
But the thing is, again, that's still an extension of empathic abilities and being a healer. When you feel someone's pain, then you know what to do to help it, and that's what Steven
I'm
usually.
gonna call bullshit on that because he doesn't know what it's like to be blind, but he still healed Connie's eyes.
Yeah, but that's a different thing. That was a physical injury. This is actually this one is emotional pain. This is how he deals with it. He literally takes it on himself. You should probably do something about that console.
Oh, yeah, you interact with it and it's fine.
Yeah. So, but again, the healing saliva, that is how he deals with the physical pain. The emotional pain does require a different touch. In this case, when he felt the pain of the lighthouse, it was something that that the pain was so great that that his gem resonated with it and he felt it. But
Right.
with Lapis, this is actually him reaching out across, it's him reaching into Malachite's mind to
Right.
talk to these individual players. And this is him actually reaching out and talking to them, meeting with them, and that ability is not just limited to gems, because that we do see that he can actually interact with other people and communicate with them in different regards. I won't say how, because there's already been enough spoilers.
I'm sorry, I'm horrible.
But essentially, the ability allows him to reach out to them and communicate with them in ways that normal people can't. And that ability is expanded on later because, without giving it away, Steven does have an ability that does allow him to reach out to other people that in a way that's not human or gem. So I think that could be because of his gem and its own unique abilities.
Mm-hmm.
But I personally believe that they all come from the same place, from his empathic abilities. It's just that while one aspect of his abilities heals the physical, the other half is for healing the mental, the spiritual, and so forth.
Right, but he's not actually actively healing anyone. He's just connecting with them.
I agree with that. But in that defense, he doesn't know any better how to use these abilities. Because, like I said, the last time he showed similar abilities like this was in the lighthouse, and that was a minor thing. He didn't fully understand it, and even now, he doesn't fully understand it. When he first spoke with Lapis, he just thought it was the dream.
Right,
and
but like with the lighthouse, I would argue he was feeling physical pain because the house was physically injured. Like, yes, it is a house, but it is a sentient house. It was physically hurt by Lars carving his name into it. So it would make sense that he would feel physical pain if he's tapping into that sort of empathy. But that also being said, if it is a physical problem, because it is shown before that he can heal, not necessarily I wouldn't necessarily consider him inanimate, but like gems kind of themselves are inanimate, as in like the actual gem, not the thing inside of it.
Yeah, I get it.
Anyway, he could have possibly healed the lighthouse physically, because the problem was a physical problem that started the snowball. And the thing is that because it was like all of the Earth, like all of the gems on Earth, basically are fragmented gems. It was a gem. It was a broken gem. It wasn't a whole
Well, the gem.
being.
No, actually, the gem in the lighthouse was a whole gem. It was just stuck in a wall.
Right, but it's not. But like that. That's like with Lapis when she was stuck in the mirror. It's not a whole being. It has now been placed in an inanimate object, and that makes them incapable of having their own form.
Yeah, but here's what I think. This is why I still say this is an extension of his empathic abilities. Sorry, it's fine. Sorry, this is what happens when we're in the same room. But pretty much as a result of because of the empathic abilities, Steven can actually reach out and communicate with them on a mental level. It's not a be all end all I can heal you thing, because there are other ways that these abilities work. And I'm not going to go into them because that's going into other episodes territory, but there are ways that he can reach out to them in a way that literally lets him harmonize with these things. Hence why he was able to communicate with Lapis. He didn't fix the problem, he just was able to communicate with her. It allowed him to essentially resonate with her, pretty much. And that, in a way, is a form of empathy. It's not exactly the same, and it's not like with the lighthouse. The lighthouse, he literally just felt its pain, and because it was so immense that his gem was picking up on it. Here, though, it's him actually communicating with someone because he's actually reaching out to them.
Right. Well, that is a pink thing then.
Yeah, that is a pink thing.
Yeah, I would actually say it really is that he has pink, because it, like, that's the whole diamond control. That's you all feel your diamond with you all the time.
Yeah, but
and like Blue even said that Pink always felt the hurts more deeply, or the hurts to other gems more deeply, and all that fun stuff. So maybe it has nothing to do with empathy. Maybe it's just the connection and the general psychic ability to connect. And then because Steven is an empathic person, Steven sees a hurt duck, he is going to fix the duck. No matter what, no questions asked. And so I would argue it almost is less of an empathic power and more of just a telepathic psychic power that he applies empathically because he can't not. Like, but again, he didn't feel the pain of Lapis in the same way that he felt the physical pain that was being projected to him by the house.
But again, in that regard, he actually reached out to her. And like I said, this ability isn't limited to just gems. He can reach out to other beings. He does reach out to other beings.
And I do remember this. That also being said, though, they are beings with a connection to him somehow.
Yes, but again, that leads back to the empathic things. Hence why he was reaching out to Lapis. Lapis is someone that is important to him.
Empathy is specifically about being able to feel and understand another person's emotional state of being. He has no clue. Like, I would argue that he is completely oblivious to Lapis's personal emotional state. He just wants to find her. He wanted that connection so that he could figure out where she is, specifically to help her, not understanding what she's going through in that.
Actually, I think you're actually making a good point here. I'm sorry.
Wowsies!
I mean, I think this ability. I think it's through empathy that he was able to reach out to her because they're so closely connected. But I think the ability isn't just limited to that. It's just that it works better with people that he's close to. Because going back to what I said before, that the ability isn't limited to gems, which I'm not going to talk about right now. There is actually, he can reach out to other people, and he has done and he does that. And we see the full range of this sort of thing like late into the series. But it's just, again, it's the empathic part, I think, is mostly due to the fact that these are people he knows and he has a connection with. Which I still am going to argue that it has ties to the empathic abilities. But I can see where you're coming from here, because these are things, because theoretically he could reach out to anybody, but odds are the people that he probably would be most likely able to get to first are the people he actually is close to and has a connection with, which I kind of get that. I still slightly disagree with you, but I think I see where you're coming from.
I feel like we're honestly arguing about semantics at this point.
Yeah, at this point we're getting off topic. Well, you already spoiled everything.
Well, not everything. I could do worse. But Like it, I just I to clarify, I think that it's a telepathic power that is a general power. Like I do feel I can see where you're coming from, that it isn't just a specific
Actually, no,
gem power, it is a general power that he can create a telepathic connection with anyone, typically through dreams. But because of the person that Steven is, he applies it empathically. He deeply feels and cares for, like, he is a very empathically inclined person. I wouldn't say that he has empathic powers, but he sympathizes with every single person that he meets. And if they have a closer emotional connection to him, like someone from the town or one of the gems or his family, then he resonates even harder. It's not that he understands their emotional state, he just understands that they are struggling and wants to help.
I kind of get that. Again, I would still argue there's a level of empathy involved, especially since one of those episodes one of his, I'm going to say, episodes
Mm-hmm.
was hit in a later episode was actually triggered when he felt someone else's pain.
Mm-hmm.
But I can kind of see where you're coming from, and there is support for that because during one scene when Steven tried a similar thing with the diamonds, they actually felt his presence and interacted with him on that plane, which I'm going to say right now because she spoiled the diamond thing.
Sorry, guys.
I'm sorry, I'm not going to let that go.
I know, I'm bad. I'm horrible.
But we're getting off topic very much but this is a good debate. I like it. But bottom line, like the episode, it built foundation for future stuff. It showed the groundwork with stuff with Lapis, also showcasing the analogies with her and Jasper and their abusive fusion. Pretty much, I liked the silliness with Steven getting into the dream state. I liked expanding more on Steven's abilities and how that could come into play later. And overall, I think it's a good episode too. I like again. There's enough loose ends that they can still be tied up in later episodes, while also kind of putting a countdown on where things are going. So overall, good episode. Both good episodes. So
Yes, I agree.
yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson,
And I'm Haley Dudley.
and this is Timothy D. Hobley. And we shall see you later. Take care.
Bye.
Yep.